Okay, hey, we are back. This is Harvey Hubbell, and this is Harvey Hubbell Show and Tell. And today we have Jeff, who's the Associate Head of School of Academics of the Southport School. And we are going to do, you guys are doing the community lecture series, and we're doing a screening April 25th of our film, Hopeville. And you guys are sponsoring us. We have a sneak peek screening and panel discussion. Jeff, how the heck are you?
Great, thanks, Harvey. How are you?
Oh, if I was any better, I'd be twins.
Yeah. Because I have twin sisters.
You have twin sisters?
Yeah.
Wow. So
So
you know,
yeah.
what I'm talking about. So talk to me about Southport School and the kind of work you do there. And I mean, it's a great school. I know Ben. I've been down there a lot. I love your school. Talk to me about it. And how do you guys get so good? What's the secret sauce?
Yeah, I've this is my 33rd year at the Southport School. So I've got the world's most boring resume. Started here right out of college. Had an opportunity to do a lot of things here. And I think the secret sauce is really in the evolution. I think it's the kind of program that's dynamic, and always evolving, constantly evolving. How can we take research initiatives, bring that to practice, and what type of practice? What does that need to look like? How does that inform instruction? How does that shape our day, our student experiences, the right approaches, the methods we put in front of our kids? I really do think that's the secret. When you land on some of those things and things like from the movie, right? You know that structured literacy is what's going to be most effective for our kids that struggle. Okay, and we put that in place, and we've had that in place for a while. Now you get opportunities to look at other things that are going to impact the way kids learn. How are they processing that language to comprehend? So what's the right methodology there that's going to be, something that's going to support the work that you're doing in the Orton Gillingham that we use, or that structured literacy? And how are we going to help our kids engage, to these lessons? And what's the day look like, their experience? Because they're doing the heavy lifting. Right? This is not easy work for them. And we're asking them to come in, 6 times a day for 50-minute increments, do things that don't come naturally, that are difficult. So what are some things we can build into the program that's going to help maximize their engagement? Because I can have all the best methods, but if the children don't engage in the instruction, you're not going to have the maximum benefit.
Well, what I notice now is it used to be years ago. It took 10 years to get from the information to get from out of the lab into the classroom. But you guys are speeding that up, and you're taking the latest scientific research, and you're working with the kids. Am I right, or I'm not?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, leadership, I think sitting down with our head of school, our executive director now, Ben Powers, just, we spend a lot of time, he spent a lot of time with the research community. And we work together, he and I, to figure out, okay, here's the research. These experts are pointing us in the right direction. The Lori Cuttings, the Don Comptons, the Ken Pughs. Okay, how do we use this? How do we operationalize this? How do we get teachers on board with the research, but also how do we get them to operationalize that research? What does that mean? How does that inform and impact instruction? And that's what we've been doing, I think, since the day he stepped foot here on campus.
So how do you do it? You have meetings, and you're showing them the data. They're asking questions. Ben's giving answers. You're giving answers.
Yeah, we're getting that research. We get opportunities. We get a lot of face time with these folks, and getting an opportunity to brainstorm ways that we can do that. For example, we're engaged right now in a reading initiative that helps comprehension through the work of Julie Van Dyke over at Haskins Lab, and just what are some ways that we can use this Cascade reading program, this approach to breaking down text, um, to help our kids better comprehend. But most importantly for us is it's not a top down. These are some of the things that we'll bring here, this research, but we'll collaborate with some of our educational leaders, our department heads, even our teachers. Our entire executive function program that we've been working on for the past 12 years is incorporated not only teacher training, but teacher collaboration throughout. Because they're the ones that have to, put the work in. They're the ones that have to execute. We can put the curriculum in place, we can train, we can develop all the scope and sequence that we need, the goals and objectives, but it's the teachers that need to execute those lessons.
Well,
So,
I want to talk about your executive function. I mean, I think your students and the parents of your students are incredibly lucky to have the kind of staff that you guys have, the kind of that you guys are taking the research, getting it out there with the kids. So uh, this is the way I look at it. We were just talking about this the other day that I'm, you know, pr- Margie Gillis was saying, "Hey, I've been in the industry for 50 years." I was like, "Hey, I was in kindergarten in 1964. I'm a lab rat, man. You know,
yeah, yeah.
so coming to a school like yours, and I see we're not all the same. It's not making everybody the same as which they're trying to do in the 50s or the 60s in the United States. Now they realize each kid is uniquely different. So it's like you're playing the hand you're dealt. So you're picking up these kids. Your executive function program that you started. How did you get involved in the executive function? And tell me about the executive function program that all of your kids do in your program at your school. Am I right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I started about 10, 12 years ago. Similar approach, right? Ben and I had some discussions over it, and certainly some of the things that we need to do, because we started to think about it from a standpoint of, what happens with our kids, right? Two things need to happen before they leave this transitional program. We've got to build their skills to as close to grade level or average, whatever you want to call it, that we possibly can. But at the end of the day, they're going to be measured by how they execute. How do they use these and apply these newly discovered skills? Once that remediation has been provided, how do they now use those skills? Because that's how they're going to be measured. Um, and then, we sat and we think about our kids now. It's a dual pronged approach. So now it's provide that remediation, but also teaching our kids how to execute, how to use those skills. And a lot of that comes down to where their personal strengths and where their challenges are. And what we found years ago is a lot of schools have a difficult time moving the needle with that. So there's a lot of accommodations put in place for kids, supports, things of that nature, but also to us, tragically, and for these kids, lowers the expectation for the student. He doesn't have to do as many. He can be handed the notes in outline form. But how can we get that child to use their strengths as they're building these new skills to be better able to apply these skills as they acquire a higher level, and be the most independent learner they can be? I mean, that's ultimately what we want as teachers, what we want as parents for our kids, to be the most independent learner, to be the most independent human they can be, because these are not just school skills, they're life skills. And somewhere along the lines, I think in school, especially now, you know, Sally and Bennett Shaywitz, I think, kind of popularized, learning to read up until third grade and then reading to learn from there on. I think somewhere along the lines that reading to learn kind of morphed into, well, hey, then they'll be an independent learner because they have reading skills. And we know that's not the case. There's so many multifaceted tasks we're asking these kids to do at younger and younger ages. When I started teaching here, I was preparing eighth graders for independent learning in high school. Now we're preparing fourth graders. So we've got to, through a program like this, help our kids have a better understanding of, hey, what are my strengths? Am I good at planning and organizing? Am I great at initiating? Can I hold a lot of information and work with it? Do I struggle inhibiting some of the distracting things when I'm working? Am I able to kind of look back and monitor and check my work? And if we put these tasks in front of them and bring them more to that conscious level, things that we do every day, anytime we're completing a task, from reading a book to cleaning our car, the more, I think, explicit experience we can have with this, the better off we're going to be. And our kids are bright kids. They can better conceptualize it when given those opportunities.
So what you're saying, I mean, you kind of customize to each of the kids because we're all dealt a different hand. No two brains
Yeah.
are exactly the same. You got to get them from point A to point B. But so let's say a kid like me wanders into your school. Do I get tested, evaluated? How do you how do you, Jeff?
Yeah.
I need executive function help. Help me out, man. Throw me a
Yeah.
line. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
What do you do if I'm your lab rat?
I think the beauty of it in our program is its simplicity, because I'm a pretty simple guy. If people that know me know that. Ours kind of lines up with a standard evaluation that many kids, all of our kids, come with if they struggle in this area. We follow, the behavioral rating inventory of executive functions, the brief, as they call it, and when teachers and parents fill this out about their child, we now have, at least on paper, a pattern of strengths and weaknesses. And I think the most important part of our program, the key to its success, is you've got to start with the strengths. Our kids hear way too much about what they're not good at. And how can we use that strength? So, Harvey, how can we use your strength of planning and organizing to help us with some of the tasks that we have to do? If you're not a great reader and it takes you a long time to read your social studies homework, what we can do is we can look at through a planning lens, because you're good at that. What's your reading plan? How are you going to get the most out of this so you don't have to read it more than once? Are you going to, can we look at the title? Can we look at the captions? Can we jot down some notes as we're reading? Can we highlight? Can we ask some questions to ourselves and answer them as we go along? Can I build in some checks? And we're taking your strength to help you in an area that's a challenge for you. And it allows us to customize this because everyone's coming to class with those patterns of strengths and weaknesses. And then our students start to share strategies. What works for me when I have to do something like that? Or when I have to sit and listen to a lecture, here's what I try to do so I can focus on that and inhibit and tune out anything that's distracting. I stand up every once in a while. I ask a question. I write a note just to make sure that I'm still on task, something that somebody said. And those are the strategies, I think, that become the most powerful, the ones that the students discover themselves. We can give every student every strategy on how to note take or how to study for a test. But if those don't resonate, they're not going to use them.
So they're sharing among themselves what they learned, and and those are life skills. They become life skills. They become burned in. They're auditory. You're hearing it. You're doing it.
Yep, you got it. I'm an OG trained reading instructor myself, certified. So yeah, we borrowed a lot from that. You've got to make this a multimodal approach, and you've got to be able to generalize it, and it's got to be sound cognitively. So we start when we talk about or introduce to our students, even second graders, third graders, all the way through our eighth graders, we always begin with a non-academic task, a game you play where you use that skill. right? Less threatening for our kids, right? Because if you say, hey, we're going to talk about planning and organizing, or we're going to talk about task monitoring, and we're going to use this reading assignment. First thing they're going to do is, no, I don't read well, so I'm not going to be able to do that. But, if you think about it from a standpoint of we're going to talk about planning and organizing, and we're going to play the game Battleship. What's your plan? Where do you put your ships and why? Oh, I love that game because here's my strategy. And you can start to talk about some of your plans and things like that. Or, if we can help our kids conceptualize it through that kind of introductory experience, they see it not just as a school skill. And then we can connect it then to life skills. Well, how do I use that? When I want to have a friend over, how do I use my planning and organizing skills when I want to have a friend over? Maybe I'll jot down a few things we want to do. I'll take some things out of the garage that we know we need if we're going to rollerblade or we're going to play street hockey. I'm going to grab all that stuff. And you're using those skills. It's just bringing them to that conscious level, because then we can refer back to those experiences when we need to use it to plan and organize that essay, or where we need to sit and focus because our teacher is going to give us a lecture on the circulatory system and I have to take notes. How am I going to use some of my inhibition strategies that I know I have, that I'm good at and I've used in life? How can I now apply them to what I'm doing in school? And I think it sends a message both ways.
Well, I love the idea of playing Battleship at school and thinking of strategy. That's fun. I mean, hunter gatherers used to go out and learn one way. They didn't come in again. I'm going to go back to when I was a kid. You're watching TV, you're waiting for the bus to come. You see a commercial for Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or Fruit Loops or something like that. You have some sugar. You dose it with some sugar before you go to school, and then they tell you to sit down and wait. I mean,
Right.
nowadays kids have you running around. Before you can run around the track and you can do stuff. Hey, so you have a successful school. You take these kids. I mean, I think teachers are ninjas, educators are ninjas. They're like, what do we got going on here? How do we do it? And you were just talking to me how you take each of these kids. But how many kids do you have in your school? And what are the biggest challenges to get each of these kids with their executive function, taking care of all of them, yet getting them to the lessons that they have to learn? What are your biggest challenges? How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 125 kids, and our kids spend a lot of time in very small instructional groupings. You've seen that. 3 kids in a class, 5 kids in a class. I think some of the biggest challenges for our kids comes back to that engagement. It's a lot of hard work. It's asking these kids to do some of the things that they've struggled with and trusting us to put approaches, techniques, strategies, activities in front of them that will make this task easier, that'll help them acquire those skills. As a transition school, our goal is for our kids not to stay here longer than they need to be. We never want a student leaving earlier than they can. But sometimes to undo some of that negative learning at the cognitive level, but also some of that social and emotional negative experiences, it takes some time up front. Hey, these are not efficient strategies you're using. I got to teach you new ones. Your fallback's always going to be, for a while, what you already learned, what you knew. If the child doesn't get to us till 4th grade, he's had 5 years or 4 years, if he starts as a 4th grader, K through 3, of doing things a certain way. And he also has a different level of emotionality, social piece too to wade through. How does he view teachers? Does he or she trust the educators? Where's the self-esteem? Where's the self-confidence, if there's any? And building that back, I think, ends up being our challenges. Because I feel, I think I mentioned this earlier, I feel very confident that we have the right approaches for the kids we teach instructionally. It's just now a matter of giving us more time to spend on how can we be, as we talked about earlier, more prescriptive to each student, but also how can we make a positive impact on those other factors that are going to help them maximize effort, maximize potential, and maximize engagement. And I think those are some of the challenges. And staying on top of the research is probably another challenge too. There's so much of it out there. It's just a matter of going through it. And, information's cheap. It's the processing of information that becomes the challenge. And what's the good material? And in having, so many great minds as resources for us that can guide us, like Ken Pugh, like Margie. You mentioned Margie. Margie's fantastic. Margie is somebody that can look at something and say, hey, I can help you. I can show you what to do with this. And I can lay it out for you that everyone from student to the parent to the teacher to the administrator is going to completely understand and say, that makes sense. That's how we use it. People like that, I think, are gems in this field. And I think that's another key piece is just making sure that we're sifting through and using the right research.
Well, you guys certainly do have the great team. You have the dream team to go from. Tell me about this community lecture series that your school has, and why do you guys do this community lecture series?
Yeah, I think the community lecture series and the collab in general, you have the Southport School where we're helping 125 kids and 125 families. I think the collab exists to take some of that research to practice work that we do and bring it out to the community so that we can enlarge the footprint and help more people. If we can help 25 more teachers, if we can help more parents, you start to impact more kids at multiples. And the community lecture series is one way we do that. Getting information out there, like viewing the Hopeville movie, is going to make, I think, parents as well as educators start to ask those right questions of their district. What can we do this? Are we doing enough of this? How can we do this at a greater scale? So now you start to see the impact that's going to have on teachers and then on ultimately the goal kids in multiples, in a much larger amplitude. And I think that's the importance of something like this is it's framed in such a way that, hey, it's entertainment. It's a fantastic, fast moving, informational movie that hits at, I think, the heartstrings that a lot of people out there can identify with. If you're a teacher or an adult that struggled, you have a child that struggled, you work with some students that struggled, a friend who was just like somebody referenced in that movie. I think that's going to resonate. And the goal there is that people take that information and go back to their districts and ask the right questions, whether it's parents or teachers. And is this something that we can do?
Well,
because obviously up there in Waterbury, they showed it. They can do it.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. And that's the goal of why we made the film. We have a call to action at the end to get involved with the what's the name of it? Advocacy Toolkit. Yeah. So
the coding. Yeah.
So we have, I think, the Advocacy Toolkit. We have at the end a call to action that we put in there. And doing something like this where we show a film, we have a panel get there, and I liked who you said who the audience should be. It should be parents. It should be educators. It should be lifelong learners. But the question that I have for you, and you're a professional, but I mean, you guys are at Southport Collab. You guys have the best and the brightest minds. You guys are working on it. These other school districts, as you said, Waterbury, Connecticut did it. We show Waterbury, Connecticut. So I know that other schools can do it. I need from you to tell, maybe not me, but tell the audience, tell school supervisors, literacy supervisors, school superintendents, policy makers, any policy maker, Board of Education, parents, the teachers that want to make a difference, the elected officials, how they can make it and why they can make it and why they should come and get the information. Yeah,
I think at the policy level, policymaker level, it was spelled out by that group that you interviewed of citizens, right? We have to invest in the people in our community, and our biggest commodity is our children, right? And you put the statistic up there, the gateway out of poverty, is education. Is recently at a conference where it takes 2 years, I believe, in one of the Scandinavian nations for a family to work their way out of poverty. So in the United States, though, it takes 5 years, right? And that's the American dream, right? The American dream you know, is living well. Unfortunately, the American dream is living well in Scandinavia and not so much in the United States, and we can do something about that. And I think at that school administrator and team level, bring folks out to this film and see how it's done. Look at that model and reflect on that and say, what are we doing? We all, I believe, get into this field of education because we ultimately want to help kids. It's definitely not the path to millions and billions, but we do it to help kids. And how can we make that time most meaningful? And I think for parents, it's, like I said, an opportunity to get there and educate and ask the right questions of the district. I think that's one thing I admire about our families here, the Southport School. They're passionate advocates for their kids, but they're very well informed parents, educators, individuals. And I think it's important, and it's incumbent upon us as parents to learn as much as we can about our school's educational systems that we're sending our kids to. So I think that the CoLab, like I said, exists to further educate all those constituents.
Well, I think you're right, and this is a perfect storm right now with everything going on. And there's this thing called the internet, and you're probably aware of it. And so we can all communicate. We have this global village now where we're literally able to spread this information. So guys like you that are connected with Haskins Lab get the information out there. Now you have these lecture series out there. They can see in our advocacy toolkit. They can see who the other people to connect with in their areas. They can become an advocate because, as you said, education is the key. Now everybody's talking about science, technology, engineering, and arts, math, but you got to read to be able to be an engineer or to be a scientist. For these other things, it doesn't hurt to be well read. And we've talked about reading is not a natural thing that happens in the brain, and we're all wired a little bit different. But what I kind of like about what you were saying before at your school, as you're teaching them to unlearn, they're unpacking some things, they're packing in new tools in there. And that kind of encouragement, not just to what you're doing with the students, but now you're doing it to the community. Now you're saying, hey, we're Southport CoLab, we're here to help out these other districts. So you were saying you work in the Bridgeport school systems, or you have? So tell me about that.
Yeah, yes. I work with a couple of independent schools in the Bridgeport area. We haven't yet cracked into the public school system, but we do work with, we do some early reading screenings at a preschool and also at the Catholic Academies of Bridgeport. So some of the schools that have kindergarten, first graders that we can screen. And it's a screener that we use that is very well connected to structured literacy. So not only does it give us a chance to take a look at some of the kids that might need extra help, but it's also a great training tool for some of the teachers, the administrators there, to say, okay, here's where the challenges are with some of your kids. There's some patterns here. And what does this mean? What does it mean that the child has weak phonemic awareness skills? And what can we do for the child if they're struggling with sound symbol knowledge? So what are the actionable strategies? And What can we put in place we can embed or incorporate into the reading program to help at this early level, right? Before that gap widens, right? I don't think anyone would disagree that early intervention is important, right? I think everyone agrees on that piece.
Well, we know about early
Yeah,
intervention now. I mean, 10 years
yeah,
in 1964,
yeah,
when little Harvey was in little kindergarten, we didn't know as much about early intervention. It's like wait. He'll get it. He'll get it in third grade. He'll get it.
yeah.
He'll get it later. Boys are later. So there's still some of those myths floating around. There's still a couple. Excuse my. I'll probably get in trouble for saying a couple Japanese soldiers left on the island still fighting the Second World War someplace. So
Hmm.
there's still. I mean, I get in trouble for saying things, but I want to know or if you could explain what a screener is. Who's walking in? I got my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old. I'm going to it's early intervention. It's
Yeah, yeah.
well, can you do it to a 3-year-old? Can you do it to a 4-year-old, 5-year-old? Where who gets screened? What
Yeah.
happens? Is it painful? Sounds like screening sounds painful. What
No,
happens?
it's actually fantastic. It's a computer based, so it's an app. It's done on an iPad. The kids love it. We screen kids from pre-K, so the year before kindergarten we can do at this point. So 4-year-olds, kindergartners, first graders, and now we're layering on second grade screeners. It's a fantastic screener designed by Nadine Gabb, Dr. Nadine Gabb, who but when she was at Boston Children's doing work on that. It's connected to all the elements of structured literacy, which means they're evaluating their phonemic awareness skills, their sound symbol skills, their language and vocabulary, as well as their phonetic decoding skills that they have in place. And you have an opportunity to say, geez, it just if you're getting information from the school or your child's preschool or just having maybe another child that you're seeing just development's just not going in the direction you want, you can bring them to the Southport School. We have offer screenings here every month, free of charge. Where we could do this screener. It takes about a half an hour to do. The younger folks, even under 20 minutes. It's all gameplay where they take part in a variety of different language and learning and reading activities. And then there's an analysis that we review with them. And, it's an efficient screener in that I think the kids respond very well to it. So they're going to give us their best effort. So I think from that standpoint, the information's reliable. And the amount of work that Dr. Gabb and her team put into it to make sure it's valid, that we're testing the right skills in the right way and norming it to a point where we can get that pattern of strengths and weaknesses, that we're able to do that in schools. We can go into a school and over the course of 2 days, just reach every student, work with each student in kindergarten, first grade, second grade for 30 minutes and have actionable data.
Jeff, you're a superhero. I mean, you're going to make me cry. I'm serious on this because that is early intervention, which again we talked about. Nowadays, those of us who are in the know that this is something we can do. But back when I was a kid, or when other people, parents that are there, parents are going to just say to their kids sometimes like, "Hey, honey, we just don't learn well." But what you're saying is we're building a blueprint of how we learn, and you can fix them. You can give them actionable things. You can teach them to unlearn and learn new strategies. With going back to your executive function and your other teaching things, so you're really changing. This is why I'm saying this. You're changing lives. You have the ability to change lives, and get the parents and get the kids invested in there. Because a lot of times, people wouldn't know to work on this kid until they failed third grade, fourth grade. They're 3 or 4 grades behind. What's going on with Tommy? What's going on with Jesus? What are we doing here? But now, if the parents had struggling reading, or there's aunt or uncle or somebody in the family, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, somebody who didn't do so well, and you begin to get a little of these things, or just check your kid out in the beginning anyhow. Now we have the ability with these screeners that we can change lives. You just go in, you go to Colab once a month, or you stop in at your schools in Bridgeport. You're changing lives, Jeff. I mean, how does that make you feel, that knowing that that you're changing the lives and the families of these people as they move forward.
Yeah, I think, if you go into any vocation, I think, or any field, that's ultimately has to be, um, on in your calculus. How can I affect change? How can I, make this place a better place than when I got here? And that's what I'm trying to do. For these kids, I want to change the conversations we have about these kids. When we talk about kids through that lens, and unfortunately, you probably heard some of this stuff. Oh, he'll never read.
Sure.
Oh, he'll never be an independent learner. I want to remove these limiting factors. I don't want us, putting kids in, certain boxes and saying there's a lid on that box. That's as far as they're going to go, is to the top of that lid. I don't think that's right. And I also think, like you said, we're in a perfect storm because we've got the research. We are now finding ways to activate and act on that research in many ways to, change the trajectory of these kids by changing the way we're teaching these kids. But it always starts with changing the conversation first, to not how far are we going to, this is as far as we can go, to how far are we going to get,
Well,
and how we.
you got it. You said it. And there's many different things in this world. There is you're lazy. You're not trying hard enough. I mean, this is a universal thing, and it's,
Yeah.
you're never going to amount to much. Don't worry about thinking about college. You're going to be thinking about this or that. Uh, um, but then there's also there's that. But it's not just reading differences or learning differences. There's other things. There's second language learners. There's poverty, and so then it's the label like those kids, or that family. I know about that family, or those kids, and that kind of puts something into somebody's head where you're a second grade teacher, a third grade teacher, and the first grade teacher pulls you aside to listen. I know about Jeff. Forget about him. Forget about it. Those, Jeff comes from over there. Forget about it. So the screener changes that. It equalizes that. You're saying that the science of literacy, uh, we can teach everyone. Well, we can teach 95%, upwards of 95%. And if we start early, if we get our kids involved in it, we're going to have a whole different society. We're going to have people that are paying taxes, that aren't in prison, that are contributing members of society. I mean,
Yeah.
you're sitting on the key to the future. You and your educators. Am I crazy, or am I being over dramatic here?
No, it's hard. 33 years of doing this, I look at it from a standpoint of, yeah, I think we're doing the right thing. And it kind of goes back to your point when we think about, well, what about all those opportunities in STEM or now STEAM, where they can show or find their passion or display some of their strengths. But I would argue that every kid should have those opportunities. But if we're still spending more of our instructional time because we didn't catch this early enough, where's the time, where's the cognitive energy going to come from for the kid to explore those passions or to show their passions? So I would argue that the sooner you know, we close that gap, the more time and the more availability both the teacher and the student are going to have to explore those passions. And I'm not saying we don't do STEAM and STEM activities when they're young and we just drill reading, writing. But if we do it the right way and we catch it early for those kids that need it, we're going to have a lot more time and a lot more kids involved and a lot more kids benefiting from some of those opportunities in school, uh, to create, much more well-rounded citizens, and it's only going to improve society.
Um,
It's a dramatic look at it, but
that
kind of.
no, I agree with you. I agree with you, and I well, you hit it out of the park with that. And invest early intervention. Let's do it. Okay, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Um, in closing, what have we? What else you want to say that we haven't talked about today? What else do you think people should know? and any number of these things. We've covered a lot of ground in this short period of time. What else do you want to add that we haven't put in?
No, I think, I appreciate the opportunity to, not only talk about the intervention and, and tying into the screening coming up and how we can, certainly use science to be much more effective in identifying and helping the kids that need it. I think the movie does a wonderful job of that. I've appreciated the opportunity too to talk about that executive function because, we all need to feel independent. Um, and yeah, I think, like you said, there are a lot of folks out there still kind of old hat, right? Still doing what they've done for years. I think it's okay to disagree. But I think most important takeaway is use this information, use the information from the Hopeville movie. Please come to it, the discussion, everything we can learn from these experts that we've talked about, and start the conversation. Start a conversation, not a debate, not an argument, you know, side by side. Let's have a conversation about what are some ways that we can be more effective in helping some of these kids that struggle. And I think that's what's most important to me is we need to change the conversation.
I can't wait. This is going to be a great conversation. I love Ben and Margie and Dina. I think all three of them are in the film. Yeah, they are in the film. I should know that, but
Yeah.
uh, and I don't know Augusto yet or Stephanie, but I'm looking forward
Yep.
to the big conversation. And you're going to be there, right? You're going to be there.
Yes, absolutely. Look forward to it. Like I said, I love documentaries and I just love the way this one moved and it showed in a manageable way that, and this can be done. And I think it's anyone that goes will resonate. You don't have to have a child who's struggling. You don't have to have you don't have to be a reading teacher. It's it's a real community action film, and I applaud the efforts of everybody up in Waterbury that was open minded enough to say we're going to do this, and sounds like a wonderful community, um, engagement and effort there. So God bless them.
God bless you. Thank you very much, Jeff. You are a superhero, and I can't wait to hang out with you and talk and chat after the film and before the film and have a few laughs.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. It was a pleasure. I appreciate you saying superhero thing twice because my kids aren't going to believe it. So now they'll hear it twice. They
Yeah,
must think
show
you
them, show
misspoke.
them this.
Yeah, I absolutely will. One time they'll think you misspoke, but now you said it twice. I appreciate that. But it's really these teachers that are the superheroes. Um, my hat's off to them, and having done this for years, the influx of the research, the demands that are placed on them day to day. Sometimes I sit back and say, I don't know if I would entered the classroom if I could do it. They're amazing folks, and I hope a lot of those teachers that you worked with and were part of that movie and part of that movement. I hope that's contagious. I hope that spreads because they are I think some of the most valuable people in every community are our teachers. And I enjoyed my time. I love talking with you as always, and I can't wait for the film, for the viewing. It's going to be a great event.
We're going to have a great time. We appreciate your leadership and your guidance.
Thank you.
Much love and respect. You all come back now, you hear?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, sir.